Hey everybody, welcome back to Dungeon Brew, where we're talking about evil parties. Today we're getting into third tier play. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Dungeon Brew.
Welcome back to Dungeon Brew, everyone. Today we're talking about third tier play in regard to evil parties. One of the things that I wanted to go over at the start of this video, and make sure you check out the previous videos in this series so you kind of have an idea of where we're going with this. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about when we're getting into the third tier play is that the tiers of play really kind of break up nicely into different locales for the amount of effect that the party can have based on where they're located. So first tier play a lot of times deals with local problems, and it's a local a local type issue. So they're going into a village and they're dealing with the problems of the village. Second tier play usually starts to deal with regional type stuff. So it's a barony or a duchy or something like that. They deal with problems that affect the region, which might encompass multiple towns or it might encompass a single city. And then you get into third tier play, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And that's where you start getting into national problems and national type degrees of questing. So they're going to be dealing with the local government or threats to the nation as a whole. And fourth tier play, which we'll be talking about next week, we'll talk about global issues or world affecting issues. So but we'll get into that next week. For today, we're going to be talking about third tier play. So, Joshua, do you want to kick us off and give a little bit of an idea of where we're going with this video?
I will, but first I just want to say I really like the word Duchy. I think that's just an awesome word. I want a shirt that says "Get your Duchy." I just think it's a great word. So we've been introducing some ideas about how you could go through first, second, third tier play, etc. with evil parties. We've offered a number of scenarios in both the first and second videos. We're going to keep playing with those concepts that are introduced there and kind of build on top of it. So at the end of our second tier video, we kind of gave this option of our party either joining with the Duke and taking out the heroes that were coming in, or even going against the Duke and overthrowing him or eliminating him in order to take his power and then utilize the region in his realm. Let's go ahead and go with that concept and say that they did eliminate the Duke. And now they have their own duchy. God, I'm going to keep saying that word until the day I die. But let's say that was the scenario that took place. And now, like you said, they're now going to have to deal with national level threats because they're running a region with this evil conceptualization. Now, it may be that your fighter has the duchy. Man, just keep marking them up. We're going to tally this out at the bottom. And then let's say, maybe your thief has their own thieves guild. Maybe your cleric has their own order. They're all kind of getting in an established sense within this region that's going to gain them more power, maybe even gain them peons, strongholds, something so that they are going to be able to exact this influence over the region and further fulfill their.
Right, they have their own domains, right? Domains of power in some way, and like you said, it makes sense that maybe your fighter is now the Duke. It's assumed that he just didn't inherit that title because he murdered him. Generally, that's not how that works. Second tier play should have involved, if that was their motivation, if that was their goal, you needed to work as a GM to set up the possibility of that coming true, or it's also possible that they claimed the duchy after killing the previous Duke, and then decided that, hey, it's ours now, and they're dealing with external threats because they have put themselves in a position that has made them villains to the rest of that nation. So they basically came in and killed him and said it's ours now, and the rest of the nation, including potentially the king or queen or whoever, is saying, no, it's not yours. So
And that's exactly how I would see this playing out.
Yeah.
Is that you overtake the land and the Duke is going, okay, I have unrest in the southeast where this party is now taking over a section of my kingdom. Mm-hmm. They're running it and enforcing laws that are not my own. I need to rally the neighboring kingdoms, the adjacent kingdoms, and send them in with the dukes that are reigning those areas and go take my land back.
Okay, there was a lot going on in that because you were mixing and matching dukes and kingdoms and all kinds of stuff like that. But
well, I think Okay.
is the nation, the king is taking his power and exerting it against the newly formed duchy, right? So that's certainly a possibility, and let's just go ahead and run with that as a possibility, because ultimately the goals of the party are probably something along the lines of they want to exert power, exert their domains, and take over more of what potentially is that area. That's going to require a lot of effort on their parts. They're getting into higher tier play. They have a lot of power at their disposal. In general, the entire party could probably take on quite a few enemies at a time and can be very destructive on the battlefield. So part of what should be occurring in first and second tier play is them accruing allies or accruing underlings. Like you said, you'd have a thieves guild potentially. So if you've got a rogue in the party and he's got his guild, then he's going to start exerting that influence in order to undermine other lords and ladies in the region. You're going to have people like the cleric who is using his religious influence in order to exert power and control over the region. So they all should be attacking from multiple positions in order to try and gain as much control as possible. If they played smartly during second tier, they probably made some allies from other lords and ladies with the promise of more power or the promise of more authority if they came into power, if they supported them against the king. So these are all things to kind of think about if this is the direction that the campaign is going, and these are the motivations of the players as you're getting into this tier of play.
So one of the things that I think that's really important with this, which you kind of touched on a little bit, is them strengthening alliances and eliminating some of their probably their bigger foes, their threats in this course of gameplay, and being tactful in doing that. Finding a ways for them to continue to expand and keep back those threats at a national level. What are some of the quests that you usually see coming this way? I mean, when we looked at first tier, we had NPC mouthpieces that were giving quests, directing them. We used them from a DM perspective to kind of teach the party how to play evil characters. Mm-hmm. When we went to second level play, we had the Duke, who was, again, kind of the mouthpiece who was able to introduce new threats, introduce ideas, give some tactical plays to the party so that they could, again, strengthen their ability to play these villainous characters. Mm-hmm. Now we're in third tier. They are in their own. They should not really need a lot of help from the DM anymore to figure out how they want to move forward. But how do you coax them along and coach them to now move things from a regional area to a national way of, again, playing these characters?
It kind of depends on the group, honestly, in terms of the actual players. Some players are very good at self-motivating and self-identifying the direction that they want to go in this style of play. Other players aren't necessarily just as in tuned, which is part of the reason we had talked about coaching evil parties in first tier play, is to kind of get them acclimated to the idea of the options available to them. For those types of players who aren't necessarily going to be on board for going, oh, this is what I want to do, they should have been developing allies. Like I said, we talked about domains, the Thieves Guild, the religious order, even the fighter potentially becoming a duke or something, or the paladin. I guess it'd be an anti-paladin, but point is, they should have their own domains. With their own domains, they potentially have advisors. They have loyal underlings who can provide them information. So you can still have a mouthpiece as the DM by bringing those people forward and saying, okay, so you want to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and then you have your lieutenant in the Thieves Guild saying, okay, I understand what you're saying here. In order for us to try and take over this next town or to out this next Thieves Guild, these are the steps we need to take, type of a situation. Just to kind of provide some context to that player. Presumably they're still working as a group. We're not running 4 or 5 or 6 different campaigns. They're working in concert in order to try and advance their unified goals of taking over this nation or taking over more of the region or something along those lines. Allow them to hold counsel with one another. The biggest thing, I think, is another frank conversation with your players where you're saying, hey, listen, if there's something that you're wanting to do, come forward and talk to me about it so I can make sure that I'm preparing in front of you. And this is a conversation that I personally have a lot with you and the rest of the players that play in my groups, because I have a tendency to like to build out in front of you guys in the direction you want to go. first tier play, I kind of run things my own way, and then towards the end of that, I'm saying, okay, which direction are you going? Which direction are you going? What are you guys wanting to do next? And then I build in front of you to allow for that self-motivated play to take you to the areas of the game that you want to go to.
And I know that's one thing that we both like to do. Having player-centered or player-focused gameplay, it brings people back to the table again and again because it's really enjoyable to engage in this. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that you also shared in here that I think is really important is recognizing where your quests are going to continue to come from. And it may come from those advisors. It may come from your war council who's giving you new things that are happening in the region that you need to go engage in and execute in order to maintain the power you have to turn a previous enemy into an ally, or allies that are now turning against you that are becoming enemies, and how you need to respond to those at this level of play in order to secure what you've gained.
Well, and it's a recruiting quest too. Like a lot of this tier can be, there are trolls in the mountains that the king has instituted a pogrom against, and they've been hunted for decades. And the evil duke that is now in control is like, I don't have anything against trolls. Let's recruit them. Let's bring them into the fold. And suddenly you have a troll army. So that kind of play, that kind of awareness of what's going on in regional events allows the evil players to capitalize, or evil characters to capitalize on it. Same thing can be said about neighboring kingdoms. There are, the neighboring kingdom to the east has long been an enemy of this king, and getting them to come along with you and wage war from a different side, because now's the opportunity to strike, is hugely beneficial to the party. Making that information readily available to the group allows them to be allows them to be tactfully aware of the things that tactically.
That's where I was.
I know.
I was with that exact same goddamn word.
I know. They also have to be tactically aware of where the boons and benefits can be found in the area that they're in. It's the same thing as, let me recruit this lord because he was offended. The king offended him in some way, so this lord will be an ally. The trolls that are being hunted are going to be an ally. The neighboring kingdom is going to be somebody that we can potentially use by trying to get that kingdom to come in and attack again. Doing as many things as possible to try and turn the tides of this conflict in their favor is something that's going to be really fun actually to play through.
And I think it's important to be creative with this. Like, some of the stuff that we are giving is really just kind of direct, like, hit or miss type of stuff of how to engage with, like, kingdoms that are coming in and allies. But let's say that you can introduce new concepts that are happening too that could weigh the scales differently in the course of you trying to gain your goals. You have a sister city of dwarves that's holding the Western Front against a province that the king is moving in, but that city is now suffering from a famine, and so they can't maintain their crops. And this is a whole nother issue that you have to do by shipping your own food or rerouting resources in order to maintain that city's strength. Otherwise, it may, again, encroach on what it is that you're trying to hold. So it's like finding other, like, unique scenarios that have happened in history and previous wars in other situations that you can then replay those same ideas and concepts within this that aren't just gain this ally, fight off this enemy, make this alliance. Have your alliances be in trouble. Have your enemies suddenly have a weakness that comes up that you're able to engage in that doesn't involve necessary warfare or sending in armies to fight them.
Right, because the warfare aspect of this is, in general, probably something that's going to be happening in the distance, right? Not every single gameplay session is going to be the Duke in the middle of, along with the rest of the party, engaged in a muck and blood battle in the middle of the war. That's not for one where the Duke probably would be, because that's dangerous to him, and any selfish evil person is not going to put themselves in that much danger all of the time. But it's also a scenario where it just does not make for engaging gameplay. There should be things that only can be resolved by the party still at this level. Higher level threats executed by the kingdom, such so the king is pulling in his most powerful, magi in order to send them against the party that the party has to deal with directly, because your level 3 foot soldiers are not going to be a contest for a high level mage or something like that. It's just not going to work. So make sure that you are pulling in some of those higher, more powerful threats that the king is using against you.
So last question for you before we wrap this one up, because I asked it before in the previous video. What indicator do you look for to say that third tier is now ending, outside of knowing that we've now reached like level 15 or so? How do you know that they've accomplished their goals and you're ready to move into fourth tier?
So this is going to be my answer for fourth tier as well, which is basically at either the party accomplishes their goals, and this becomes more ephemeral at this level, because they might be content when they become the rulers of this region type of a situation. So the campaign is either complete when they have accomplished their goals. They've supplanted the king, and they are now the rulers of this land, and they have that power. That might be all that they were after, which is a reasonable goal in terms of like the evil who wants to gain power, gain control. Or they're dead. Which, unfortunately, I mean, this is just kind of a reality of playing evil play or playing villainous play. Evil characters tend to be, or evil people tend to be hunted down in D&D settings, right? So they are the BBEG. They are the big bad evil guy, and other people are hunting them, which means that the good king or the good parties or the good heroes are actively trying to kill this party at this point. That should be a reality, and that should be a threat that the group is aware of to one degree or another. And the end of this tier is either they have eliminated or they have conquered this region and they are now in full control of it, or they're dead.
All right. Anything else that you want to add before we get into fourth tier next week?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, in that case, you guys go get your Duchy.
Dungeon Brew.